You know, if you've been on YouTube in recent years, you're aware that every crack and crevice in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area has multiple YouTube videos devoted to it. And Banholzer, where we are today, is no exception. But I thought it'd be worth making yet another Banholzer video just because I was familiar with this cave as early as the 1980s. And I have some perspective on it, and I've seen a lot of changes in here. I've seen a lot of changes in here even since I've been here the last time, and that wasn't all that long ago. So we're basically at the entry point of the cave, and you can see where this wire mesh has been, with the concrete, was broken through in 2011. All this stuff, the cave was sealed in 1991, and then 20 years later, it was dug open again. But some of the peculiar things here, we're going to look at the theme of the shrinking cave. Banholzer has been the shrinking cave. It's lost rooms over time. And it's a much smaller cave than it used to be even as late as the 90s. And the other thing is that there is a 120-year-old organism living in this cave. They're the oldest thing living in any Twin Cities cave. And so I want to kind of investigate that aspect of it. But just going over here, even this area has changed. This used to be wide open. This used to give access to the Sumac Street sewer. And this was one of the big entry points. So it's kind of like a double entrance out there. And you could follow the Sumac Street sewer quite some distance from here. But now I can see there's some very new public works, concrete and so on. So this has been, the Sumac Street sewer has been sealed off from the cave. We've lost that. So there's our, one of our first things we've lost there. Now I'll talk more about the cave in passing as we move through it, but basically this is based on the Banholzer Brewery, which existed from 1871 to 1904. And the brewer happened to be a stonemason, so he carved out a half a mile of these passages here. Now, there was a brewery on this site before that. It was called the North Mississippi Brewery. That was here from 1853, but it didn't have all these lagering caves down here, so it was kind of like, it wasn't anywhere near as interesting as Banholzer would become. Banholzer was a big deal. They even had their own Air Force, so to speak. In 1886, the old man, I guess Frederick Banholzer, he established balloon rides from his beer garden up on the surface. You could take a balloon ride over to Lilydale, cross over the river. Just get trashed on beer some afternoon, go take a flight over there, come back, that kind of thing. So it was kind of interesting. The cave has had a subsequent history. We'll talk about that as we move along here.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Okay, they use this for beer, obviously. What did they do with the beer? They brought it in here to keep it cold and let it do its thing. And how did they get it in and out of here? Because
Good point.
They obviously didn't get it through these tunnels.
Everyone crawls through these tunnels and you think it's like that. But if you look along the bluffs, if you scout along the bluffs, the river bluffs from here, you'll find these giant concrete pourings there. And those used to be wide open. And so they had very ready access from the cave just down to the river. And so you could have like barrels and just roll them down there to the river. Another thing is that this cave, as you put the purpose of it, it was a lagering cave. So what they were trying to do is, the lager beer, it ferments at a lower temperature. And so this was artificial refrigeration for them. Because it's a hot summer day and I'm wearing a coat in here. And the other thing, being so close to the river, they could bring river ice into the cave in winter and cover it with sawdust, and it would last most of the year. And to aid just from being underground, that was one thing, but you could add this other, the river ice as an additional refrigerant. So it was kind of like a really nifty operation. But they went out of business at the same time most of these other lagering caves did, for the simple reason that above ground refrigeration based on cheap electricity became available, that they didn't need to they didn't need to bring it way down underground and all that. They could just keep it in an above ground stock house like you see at the Schmidt Brewery, not all that far from here. And that's another thing. When I was back when I was familiar with this cave in the pre-sealing era, 491, everyone around, you talk to see any kids in here, anything, they all were just dead certain this is the Schmidt Cave. Oh, we're going into the Schmidt Cave. It's like, no, it's the Banholzer Cave. It took like Gary Brueggemann's research and then my work to just establish, hey, this is the Banholzer Cave, not the Schmidt Brewery Cave. As I've said before, Banholzer Cave has gone through some different historical periods since its abandonment in 1904. Something special happened in 1904, and I'll talk about a little bit later, but for now, I want to talk about some of those historical periods. So from 1904 onwards, this was like a big party cave for the West Side. And it was known as the King of Party Caves, and more particularly because it had two entrances, or two exits, if you want to look at it that way. So that you're having a party down here and it gets so wild that the police are notified. You can, they'll come in one way and then you can run out the other, or vice versa. And this only came to an end when the Keystone cops finally realized you got to have police at both ends, at both the entrance and the exit if you want to, capture people in that cave. But anyway, so one of the time periods of Banholzer was the so-called Middle Earth era. Now, back when I was in high school, I noticed that like a lot of kids were reading these, Lord of the Rings novels, Tolkien and that kind of thing, and it was like, this was, it was a really big deal. And they brought that same imagery down here, that same kind of, these literary references, if you will. And so this is the only remaining one that I can find in the cave today, Tolkien's Tunnel. So this would have been carved probably in the 1970s. This, you can see it's already got those, it's had a growth in there. So this is a pretty old carving. But it gives you an idea how long ago that was. In the 1980s, Don Boxmeyer, late reporter for the St. Paul Pioneer Press, I really liked the guy. He did an article about Banholzer Cave, but he didn't call it that. Again, like I said, when everyone was under the mistaken notion that this was the Schmidt Cave, so I kind of helped to correct that notion. He called it Frankie's Cave, and I think it's because Frankenstein, it's like this big Frankenstein type cave. I don't know otherwise what it would be, but he came down in this cave and he taught, and he talked about the different passages down here. They apparently had names. So there was like the Three Sisters Passage. I think that means that there were like 3 parallel passages, and some others like that. Now, I earlier alluded to the fact that this is the incredible shrinking cave. This cave was a lot larger at one time than it is today. And that you can get a better sense of that right here, because, like I said, in 1991, the highway department sealed off the entrance to the cave when they were redoing Shepherd Road, and they pumped a lot of fill into one of the rooms immediately under the highway. And then the cave was sealed for 20 years, and in 2011 it was dug open again. And so when it was dug open, so now it had already lost that big room under the highway that had been there before. And then there was another big loss in 2015. The new Hazelden Betty Ford Clinic was built approximately above our head where we are standing now. And in 2015, all of a sudden, hundreds of feet of cave passage in here were sealed off, and we can't even get to them right now, and they haven't been since. There you can see examples of the blockage. You got like a talus slope going up there. There are these talus slopes all up and down here on this side of the cave. What they must have done is like knocked a hole in through the ground, on the surface, and then just put tons of sand in there, and then it kind of came in and just formed these slopes down here. But a lot of cave was lost in 2015. So there was, for example, there was a place called the High Baroque Altar or something like that. It was like this, it would be like that away. You'd go over there, and there was, all like these pseudo-holy symbols, or kind of like some kind of shrine, maybe a shrine to rock metal, who knows. And there were like these candelabras and things, like it was some kind of holy site or a holy shrine. Can't get to that anymore. That's completely sealed off. That's just and then, oh no, the other big one was, the really big loss in 2015 was, from the very beginning, Banholzer had built a road. There was a brewery building on the surface, and there's a road coming down here. You don't find barrel chutes in here. He didn't do it that way. What he did is he had a whole like spiral ramp coming down to the cave. And so you could walk up this long spiral roadway up to the surface, and there was a shack up there. And all that has been sealed off on that side when they built the clinics up there in 2015. So, like I said, the cave has lost a serious percentage of what it used to be. Well, I've been discussing various time periods in the history of Banholzer Cave. And one I left for last was the mushroom era, because this was special. Now, this cave, from the time it was dug in 1871 until it was abandoned in 1904, it was a lagering cave, so they stored beer down here. But when the brewery closed, they wanted to, in their effort to get some money out of it anyway, they rented the cave out to an experimental mushroom grower, and his name was Louis Lambert, and it's famous in the history of mushrooms in the United States. He did a lot of work with experimental mushroom bed, trying out new mushrooms and so on. And it's very interesting that one of the mushrooms that's documented that he grew in this cave was the so-called parasol mushroom. Now, a parasol, of course, is an umbrella, right? And so this was a mushroom with a nice large cap to it. Okay, no big deal. But the thing is, when this cave was dug open again in 2011, I was amazed to find these parasol mushrooms growing in here at odd spots. And I took the map of Banholzer Cave and I started mapping the locations. But every time I came in here, it was different. You know, they only last so long. But one thing that does endure, so the fruiting body, that mushroom that you see and you're familiar with, that doesn't last very long. That is soon gone. But the underlying mycelium is persistent in the soil. And it is my belief that this is the oldest living organism in a St. Paul cave. This mycelium from the parasol mushroom, originally planted by the mycologist Louis Lambert back in 1904. And wow, that go forwards 2011, I found it again in 2015, and more recently, it's still here. This mycelium has lasted 120 years in this cave. Now on this trip, I haven't been able to find any fruiting bodies, like on past trips, but I have found kind of remnants of one of the mycelia here in the soil. And that to me is really remarkable that it's able to live in here. And what it's doubtless living on is things like, you know, bat droppings, you know, spilled pop, just the sort of snacks brought in by people and it all provides a kind of nutrient that is, so that this mycelium can continue to live in here. So it's a very remarkable phenomenon to encounter in this cave. Another thing in the fungus way is in 2015 I was part of a DNR expedition, if you will, that came into this cave, and we all wore white bunny suits, like the Pentium suits you see on television in sterile rooms. And one of a researcher at the University of Minnesota was doing a study on trying to find an antidote for white nose syndrome. So she was sampling the cave sediments in here. So it's interesting that this cave is noted for, not only this 120-year-old Methuselah Mycelium, as I call it, but also, some other unique fungal phenomena. Well, now I have a bonus feature for you. I just thought that, one idea is that this 120-year-old mycelium has just exists in the cave soil here at Banholzer. But I also heard the idea that, well, maybe Louis Lambert, the old mushroom farmer, maybe he's still here in the cave and he's farming his mushrooms and we just don't know about it. So I went to Amazon and I got this handy dandy ghost meter. And this is one that measures EMF. You can measure other properties. And so I'm just going to use this to see if maybe maybe he's here somewhere in the cave.
Is that just a ghost graffiti behind you, or?
Oh my gosh! Jeez!
Well, light that thing up.
Wow.
Let's find some ghosts.
Okay, let's get going. Let's get cracking here.
Let me know if you get a reading.
Okay.
You think you got something?
I got a detection going this way.
All right. Well, let's go this way. Let's figure out what's going on here.
Wow, now it's getting really strong.
Oh, I'm scared.
Oh my God.
Oh, wait a minute. What's
What
this?
are you doing?
Oh, hi, guys.
What the heck are you doing?
Getting a little warm down here.
Well, that is
That
is the DC, that is the EMF that we're reading.
Oh, all right, well, keep cool.